Welcome to The Sweet Life. I'm Kristi Andersen. The Sweet Life is all about real conversations with real leaders in our community. Joining me today is Mark Mathia of Signature Performance. Thanks so much for being here, Mark.
Kristi, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't always get that every day, so it's good to hear that it's an honor.
It is.
So tell me a little bit about your position as Chief Experience Officer at Signature Performance.
Yeah, I think I have one of the best jobs on planet Earth. My job at Signature Performance, which is a healthcare administration organization, is really all things talent, from the acquiring of new talent all the way through, and the experience, or how an associate feels when they comes to work. You know, what is that brand promise, and are we living up to who we say we are? And so it's a real pleasure to work with lots of people and to do my job every day.
And hundreds of people, really,
Yes.
across the country. You
Across
have a big footprint.
We do.
So did you think, if you think back into early in your career, or when you were a kid, was this what you aspired to be?
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know that this actually existed when I was a kid. And so as I look at my career, it's been really, by chance, an opportunity to follow my talent and strengths. And the world just kind of found me, and we found each other, and it turned out to be something. So you know, starting out, you know, I'll go back to when I was really little. You know, I had a learning disability, and so I was one of those kids who really excelled on the playground, but in the classroom struggled quite a bit. And I remember at that time, which can be those times when your self-image gets hurt, all that kind of stuff, I remember being kind of called into the administrator's office. My mom's in tow, and they're having a talk about me. I was right there, but anyway, they were talking about my educational path, and I could just see something welling up in my mom. And at one point in the conversation, she said, "Stop. I don't know what you're insinuating here, but if you can't teach my son, you need to learn to teach better." And from that moment on, I always said my mom was my first strengths coach. Yeah. She saw something in me that nobody else did. So how do you excel on the playground and not in the classroom? Well, you work on the classroom and you excel on the playground. Well, as I continued my journey, what happened was kind of funny. I ended up getting better at scholastics, kind of figuring out how to control my focus, and getting a football scholarship to play for a small college. So I was able to move into that, and on top of that, begin my career in the U.S. Army Reserves in the ROTC program. So the military and football and everything, which I always say this was my playground, really taught me to hone my skills. And it was during that transition when I was finding myself that I ran into great mentors who encouraged me beyond my first strength coach or my mom along the way to always believe that what I have to offer is something special.
And those mentors are so important. And not everyone has a mom that goes to bat for them in the principal's office, right? But I'm sure that we can all think back and look and go, that person was my mentor along the way. How important is that for people to grab onto a mentor?
Yeah, well, I think it's critical. And so each one of us needs to have or be surrounded by, I always call it a personal board of directors. I don't know if that's a thing, but trusted friends at work, people you can really count on to give you the truth so that I can act in my strengths, and guess what? There's plenty of them. But there's also blind spots and weaknesses and things that I'm kind of trudging through that I need a little support. So when I have people I really trust and they trust me, we have open communication. I get it told to me, so I know I can have an awareness of it, and I can take the proper actions to make the right moves in my life. This started early. This learning over a lifetime started, I remember, in high school football. I was a sophomore, and I played about every position on the field. At that age, I was a little larger than the other kids, so I had this great leg up in football. I tended to quit growing. Everyone kept growing, so it evens out in the end. But anyway, when I was in there, I remember coming into the locker room after a hard day of practice, and one of my coaches pulled me aside and he just said, "Mark," he goes, "you're really a jack of all positions out here, aren't you? But you're not really an ace at none." And he went on to explain that if I don't bear down and focus my energies on a set outcome or a set position, that I'm only going to be average. And you know what, he was right. If I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have had an opportunity for a scholarship on a one position scholarship to get to kind of advance my academics, advance football at the time, which was important to me, and kind of move on. And I've taken lessons like that through mentors in my life and said, wow, I have to really remember that, because in business, just like it was on the playground, we have to be able to focus. And when experience started to become a thing, I was in organizational development, human resource, and so the experience just added the data and some of the psychology to everything that we're doing. And so to pull all that together gave me the focus I needed to really start to accelerate my career as well.
But hearing that constructive criticism, if you will, sometimes is hard for people. So how did you were able to take, you know, a learning disability, which might be something that's defeating for a lot of kids or adults, but you took that constructive criticism, you took that support from your mom and your coach and other mentors, and you put yourself on the right path. How what advice do you have for people in those situations?
Yeah, we all aspire to do more, and in each one of us we feel like we have a spark. There's something more that we can contribute. And I believe that's true for every single person on planet Earth. That's why I love, give a shout out to Gallup, Clifton's Strengths. That's why I love the focus of seeing what's uniquely right in other people as we lead. It's just a critical component to everything that we do. But when we develop that, we have to get used to both sides of the spectrum. There's some things we're not going to be great at, and it's okay not to be great at everything. And for me, that was the biggest lesson. So as a young leader, I had to realize I can't do it all. I can't both be the top performer and the top leader and the top. I had to learn where's my lane, where am I best utilized, and how can I add the greatest value in what I'm doing right now. And by having that focus on what's right and enough humility to admit what's wrong, that allowed me to position myself and my career to really kind of find balance in my approach to business, and to help me kind of see that vision for what's possible forward. I'm still asking the same questions, Kristi. I don't have all the answers. I think there's still more in here. I'm really excited about what the future holds. And so I one time heard an author who said, hey, what's the favorite book you ever published? And he said, well, my next one. I kind of feel the same thing when it comes to leading people. It's what am I going to discover about myself and how I can be better, how I can serve them better, that I'm most excited about next.
And that servant leadership that you describe and that you embody is that thirst to always learn. And I think you've described that you are somebody that just wants to keep learning. So much so that you went and actually became a strengths coach.
Exactly.
Why did you do that?
Yeah, because again, it's that focus, right? And so early on, this is pre-pandemic, we started to really focus on what does talent need in the workplace? How do we create a workplace that's exceptional, that people line up to come and work with us? And to do that, I realized that we really have to focus on what's right. We really have to call out talents, which are natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting, and then call that into action, more so than just teaching it. Everyone can take an assessment and say, hey, that's fun, this is kind of like me, I kind of relate. But not every organization does what Signature was willing to do, which is invest in one-on-one coaching for every associate to get them up so that it's not just me and I know what my strengths are, but now I know how to put them to work. I know how to apply them to the job that I'm at. It's not about just finding my next job. It's about learning to apply my best self to the work that's right in front of me, finding contentment where I'm at so that I can be the best at whatever it is that I'm doing. That's really what inspires me the most. So I am a lifelong learner. Now, probably because as a child, I never thought I could. I thought learning was something the smart kids got, and I got the playground. But once I figured out that I could master my focus, that I could master my thinking, and that I could, well, I haven't stopped learning. So I'm constantly asking myself, what do I need to learn next? I was, as a matter of fact, talking with Alan the other day, who's the founder of our organization, and I just said, Alan, I just need to make sure I'm always relevant. And as times change, as things change, and you know, Kristi, we're shifting business right now. The workforce today looks different than it did 3 years ago. So how am I changing to make sure that the goals of my vocation are meeting the goals of the organization? And that means teaching people how to lead others, serve others in a hybrid environment. It's distinctly different, and the stakes are a lot higher because what we are seeing is engagement trends dropping in terms of active disengagement, and then disengagement is actually increasing, and this all has to do with this new kind of normal, this new separation. So, you know, one of the biggest challenges as someone in experience is like, whoa, that's not going to sustain us. How do we fix that? Well, I know that I need to learn. And so I go back, I hit the books, I learn what I need to learn and figure it out along the way.
And how are you, because I think you bring up a really great point, that the workplace has changed dramatically in the last few years. And leaders are really struggling to engage their people, to get them to want to come back to the office. What types of things have you at Signature done that are maybe a little out of the box to try to boost that engagement and make sure not only are people coming back, but when they're there, they do feel valued and appreciated?
Yeah, well, that's great. And it goes into a wide spectrum of experience and kind of some of the loves I have in this life, one of them being this thing called inclusion or belonging. And so we build our programs and systems around that. What is a system around belonging? Well, I want everyone to have access to every leader in the company. I want them to be mentored by, I want them to learn the business from the subject matter experts who've walked that walk. It could be the tenure people. You know, when we look at diversity across our organization, we're a really diverse company, and I love everything about that. One of the ways that we're really diverse is age diversity. Right. So how do I take the lessons from those who have been seasoned in the business and make sure that we're connecting? Well, that's through allyship, mentorship. That's by working together and having that heightened focus on belonging. And that's where that part of inclusion is so important. For example, Kristi, if you came to our organization and you didn't feel included at every level, you would never make the emotional connection to the work that we're trying to do, because you're always going to be asking yourself, how do I become more included? You're wasting energy on that. But as an organization, if we have an inclusive environment, then all of a sudden you're just let loose and the conversation's different. It's, Kristi, how do you bring your best self to work? What will it look like if you're doing the work you love to do? How would we go about finding that for you? And that's a different conversation than the other one. So I really believe this, and I would just say, there is no leadership aside from inclusive leadership. And that's where we're hearing and watching the workforce reports that since the murder of George Floyd, there's been a decrease in the number of DEIB responsible jobs. These are practitioners, people who know this stuff inside and out. And I find that tragic, because instead of gaining momentum, we're losing a little steam. We can't do that. We cannot do that, because there is no leadership outside of inclusive leadership. And that inclusivity is going to be the difference between what makes a company a great place to work that wins awards and a company that's not going to attract the right talent at the right time to solve the biggest problems that they're focused on.
And these are tools, really, that not everyone is going to lead a giant team like you do. They may be leading a youth group at their local church. They may be leading a family and be their mom of a few kids, right? So how do we apply those tools that you're describing, and why are they important in all parts of our life, not just in business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kristi, and a hard one, right? How do you take all of this? Well, I think it comes down to values, right? And it's why I love the conversation about ethics. And at every level of every organization, I hope that there is a conversation about values and ethics. And when we start to tie our values, here's what I like to say. First, you have to know what you value most and why. No matter where you're at in the organization, if you can clue in on what do you really value, and then ask that follow-up question, why do you really value it? Then you have this arsenal of tools, like your strengths, that you could point towards your values and make sure you're living them out as enthusiastically as possible. Now, when you start to do that over and over again, you get this magical thing called momentum. And that momentum will solve about 85% of your problems. I had a mentor tell me that. And I thought, you know, you're right. I'm never sad when I have momentum. I always feel pretty good. But getting there is really hard. So it doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're in the boardroom or whether you're parenting a family, maybe you're even homeschooling. Whatever it is, if you know your values, you know why you have those values, and you apply your strengths to living those out, you begin to have this great sense of fulfillment, of completion and momentum, and that tends to be what drives us forward. So I think it's important to have those as a baseline conversation in anything you lead. And I believe we're all leaders. Doesn't matter if we have a title, doesn't matter if you make it to a boardroom or not. I am telling you what, we first lead ourselves, and then if leadership is influence, it just permeates to everyone around us. And our impact is almost felt. It becomes really tangible if we understand that influence is leadership. And if we don't, the problem becomes, if you have a blind spot, you could be a wrecking machine, and you're not aware of what you're wrecking. And that's why leadership, being influence, recognizing it, and living your values is really important for leadership these days, no matter where you're at.
And regardless of obstacles that you face along the way. You know,
Right.
you faced a pretty significant one as a child, but it didn't turn you to a different direction. You learned from that. And so it is all about mindset, right? That we are leaders, even if we don't hold that position or that title that our society makes us believe that we're a true leader in, right?
It truly is.
Yeah.
We have to be okay. The one of the things that I see people either ending their career prematurely or never giving themselves a shot is that they give up way too early, because our mindset tells us we're losing and we get weary. And it's once we get weary that we really get in trouble, because that tiredness element of leadership will have people check out. And I really believe, and now that I've coached so many people, I really believe that if we can kind of correct that mindset, if we have the right perspective, that failure is just another avenue towards yes, that we're all going to encounter those. And by the way, I still encounter those every day. You don't arrive and then one day, hey, magically everything I touch is going to turn to gold. As you grow within your responsibility and your influence expands, so does the impact on people's lives. So it gets a little scarier. So you really do have to kind of come to terms with failure and start to accept, you know, both failure and success. And then what I like to tell people is, just do me this favor. Start to spend more time thinking about your successes than your failures. We're pre-wired as humans to think negatively, so the hurts and the pains and the bumps and bruises we get, whether we're an entrepreneur or a CEO or a CXO, tend to stick longer than the good things. We never give ourselves enough time to go back and think about all the good that we've done, all the people that we've helped, and all the movement that we've gone forward. But if we do, just not to be conceited, but just to give ourselves balance, then all of a sudden the highs and the lows, they tend to even out, and we're able to lead at a steady, consistent path, and people around us notice it, and we achieve more along the way. That's
wonderful. And always be learning, and I know you will be. So what's next for Mark Mathia?
Oh, well, that's a fun question. I love dreaming about what's next. I wish I knew the full answer. But I will tell you that I've added to some coaching elements. I've taken some healthcare classes from Harvard, which I really enjoyed, because I can say I'm a Harvard graduate. To be true, I only passed one class. Okay,
it doesn't matter. It looks really great on your resume.
I bought a sweatshirt I wore at Disney World the other day.
That's awesome.
But I'm also looking at different ways to expand. One of the things that's on my mind now is this thing called mental well-being. And there's such a stigma with mental health in this world that I just want to be one of those voices that says, hey, everyone should have a counselor. We should all take our mental health seriously. And post-COVID and post the change, one of the things I'm realizing is that really has spiked up. As a matter of fact, we're seeing more and more cases of depression, anxiety-related illness, that kind of thing. And I don't think there's enough talk about it. So one of the things I want to do is educate myself on it. So I'm taking a course from the McLean School, it's McLean Hospital's partnership with Harvard, on mental health and coaching. I'm not a practitioner, so I need to know the signs and be able to refer people appropriately. And so that's on my mind, as well as making sure our benefits meet the needs of what we're struggling with as a company and as people in general.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you,
Really
Kristi.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for all you're doing for the Alliance and your friendship.
You bet. Thanks, Mark. And thank you so much for joining us on The Sweet Life.